non-citizens are not registered to vote. So to discuss this and a whole lot more, we're now going to bring in attorney, Republican consultant, and former Trump surrogate, Mahit Cook, as well as attorney and research fellow at the Thomas A. Rowe Institute for Economic Policy Studies, Alan Mendenhall. Good morning to you both. Alan, I think I'll just start with you here. So the DOJ says this record number of monitors is needed, especially after we saw blue states blatantly refuse to turn over their voter rolls. I mean, we saw that hundreds of illegals actually did end up voting in the state of New Jersey. Alan, that's what we know so far. Is this legitimate oversight, or as Democrats like to call it, quote unquote, voter intimidation?
Well, it's not voter intimidation. It might be cheater intimidation. So if you're cheating and you want to break the law, yeah, you should probably be intimidated by this. But if you're a lawfully registered voter going to the polls, you have nothing to worry about. The DOJ has federal authority to enforce federal voting rights laws. The Voting Rights Act specifically authorizes federal observers, and federal observers can observe activity at polling places and ballot counting sites. Alex, I think you and I are from about the same place in Georgia, and we've seen over the years the shenanigans coming out of Fulton County, Georgia, the double voting, the mishandling of absentee ballots, and errors in hand counting and ballots double scanned, all these kinds of weird things that are happening there. I live in Alabama now and go back and forth from Alabama to D.C. There's a town called Fort Deposit, not too far from me. And last year it had a municipal election where there were so many absentee ballots filed that there ended up being more votes than there were actual adults in the town. Yeah, that's just a municipal election, but it's a sign of a much bigger problem. Voting fraud is a real thing. It happens.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned Fulton County. My goodness, they've had a lot of issues in that Fulton County, Georgia. Mahek, to follow up with you here. So if an illegal alien was trying to vote on Election Day, how would he or she be identified, and what would the consequences be?
Well, most of the individuals going to vote need to show some sort of ID. And this is the problem, Alex, today. Every state has different laws for identification, or even how they're receiving identification. So to have individuals at polling centers, which, by the way, this is bipartisan, from Barack Obama to Biden to every other president, Democrat and Republican, we've had individuals at polling sites. But an individual would present an identification, an address, or something that shows proof, right? Because again, every state has been different in terms of identification, and they should be turned away from the voting polls if they're not U.S. citizens. Here's the catch, though. Most places aren't looking for illegal aliens. We know that because you had Spanberger unwilling to turn over her voter registration rolls. You've seen it in New Jersey. You've seen it in California. Hermeet Dillon has been the spear on voting records and making sure that illegals are not voting in our elections. But I think monitors add a layer of security, add a layer to ensure that there's no voter intimidation, that questions are being handled correctly, that provisional ballot questions are being answered, and they're observing there. But I think this is a tough battle, because once somebody has entered and they're saying they're legal and they're going to vote, we have a tougher time kicking them out today, Alex. So I think this is an extremely important program, but 77% of Americans want voter identification to prove you're a U.S. citizen. Yeah. Our voter confidence is going down today in our country because Democrats refuse to abide by our Constitution, and they think illegals are more important than American citizens.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys saw what those undercover journalists did in the state of Minnesota, where they came up and they were registering to vote, and they said there's apparently some rule in parts of Minnesota where you can, quote unquote, vouch for
Correct.
8 other people. I mean,
Right.
That needs to be looked into. Absolutely. All right, Alan Mendenhall, Mahek Cook, fantastic insight from you both this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, ahead.